Hello, I'm Jeanette Wisdom. How are you doing today?
Pretty good, and you?
I'm doing well. Today I would like to discuss Thomas Jefferson's vision for higher education during 1760 until his passing in 1826. Thomas Jefferson, born in Shadwell, Virginia, became a member of the legislature in 1769 and governor of the Commonwealth in 1779. Thomas Jefferson was one of the most significant influential persons during this era. Jefferson's vision for higher education during 1760 to 1826 was to educate the masses, publicly fund education, and a college free of organized religion. During Jefferson's terms as a member of the legislature and as a governor, he was able to have his greatest impact and influence on education. As president, almost the only educational influence was his involvement with West Point. During this era, preservation and vision for America was paramount, and education was not for personal gain, but for the good of government. Also, with Jefferson's vision, the slide just advanced too fast. Sorry about that. The vision of Jefferson was to educate the masses, which included providing strong American colleges, including the poor, women, and African Americans. Educating the youth was essential from youth to higher education. He also wanted them to be educated in America and not send them off to Europe to be educated. He wanted to include more practical subjects. And Jefferson presented multiple bills and acts to facilitate his vision. Jefferson's vision was so far advanced that he knew educating the masses was key, not just for the rich. Increased education by increasing practical subjects such as professorships of law and police, anatomy, medicine, chemistry, modern languages. He wanted to move more towards the education aspect of it, instead of the religion aspect. He was instrumental in seeing the importance of government involvement from the bottom to the top rung of education. In order to broaden education, Jefferson divided land into grids of 36 square mile townships, and then those were divided up into square mile sections, and suggested these townships reserve a plot in the center of town for a common school and one plot for a church. The other plots were supposed to be sold to raise money for these schools, but instead they were used to make the schools larger, so then they had to fight to raise more money. The University of Virginia made it possible for the Southern boys to attend college. Jefferson knew the importance of getting the education to everyone and spreading the reach, even way out into the rural ranch areas. And then the other thing that was interesting with Jefferson is that he wanted to move towards, he proposed a bill that placed the burden of funding public schools on the inhabitants of the counties by paying a proportion of tax. Thus the wealthy pays added funds for the education of the poor. Jefferson was a large proponent on publicly funded education, and he requested the Virginia legislature to fund state schools. Jefferson was instrumental in providing appropriations of federal land as endowments for colleges in certain states. This was met with opposition. People were, why do I have to pay for other children's education? We still have these complaints today, such as the Robin Hood plan.
Yeah.
Are there any questions or comments so far?
I actually have a couple. One that I wrote down, you mentioned there his burden, I think at one point, and I just marked down here, what was his drive? I guess what I'm saying is, what pushed him to work so hard for higher education in the first place? Certainly, I think if there's anybody who did need the higher education, I mean, he had so many things already, so what was his, why did he care?
Well, Jefferson knew that education was the key to freedom from England and a great America. He didn't want a few elite controlling everything, or America would just be another England. And so that was the main reason, is he wanted everyone to have a say-so, and instead of just the few. This is the famous Jefferson College that consumed Jefferson's time and energy. If Jefferson had focused more time on the practical education of everyone instead of this university, who knows what he would have accomplished. Mm-hmm. Towards the end of his time, he spent so much time and energy and money trying to get this university up and running and free of religion that he actually received a lot of criticism, and they thought that he had used funds inappropriately. Jefferson was passionate about education being practical, useful, and not influenced by religion. So he tried keeping the primary education out of religious control by beginning his own seminary school, based on Jefferson's own school of natural religion. Mm-hmm. His fear was that the zealous preachers would shape the young minds that would eventually be leaders of the country. He was strongly against organized religion, but he greatly wanted a democratic education. Thomas Jefferson began offering faculty positions to individuals based on their intellectual capabilities instead of their religious background, which was met with disdain. Jefferson made many angry by having secular professors. Mm-hmm. The University of Virginia was respected as the model college with its educational mission. It was felt that whoever controlled the colleges controlled the ideology of elite. He was trying to begin the separation of church and state. He moved William and Mary College towards professorships of law and eliminated 2 professorships of divinity and Oriental language. And one quote that was made in Addis 2003, that Presbyterians dread the advance of science as witches do the approach of the day. Mm-hmm. They were trying to keep their hold on education. Jefferson was trying to move them away from education, and then they both wound up kind of moving to the opposite side. Like Jefferson's college, it kind of backfired on him that the students came in free of religion, but then they started their own clubs of religion. And then the religious leaders started adding more practical subjects in their schools as well, and moving a little more away from theology. Mm-hmm. Jefferson felt that religious freedom was fundamental to civic freedom and a prerequisite for political virtue and moral growth. Denominational schools included a wide variety of educational opportunities centered on professional and secular training rather than theology. Restoration of the freedom of the mind being taken back from the clergy and returned to the citizens, thus escalating the people to a level of moral respectability. And this is the bill for establishing religious freedom. This is where Jefferson gave us the freedom of religion. And one of his statements that he had in one of his letters is, "Worth and genius would thus have been sought out from every condition of life and completely prepared by education for defeating the competition of wealth and birth for public trust." He wanted someone to have an education and lead a country based on what their vision and what they could do for the country, not because they were just born into it. Jefferson's leading impact was in higher education and religious freedom. Today, the effects of Jefferson's work dedication, and dreams throughout his lifetime are apparent. Jefferson was a true visionary. You have any questions or comments?
No, it's really informative. I guess if I had one, I kept going back to something you said a couple of different times. Education for all, education for all. And so one thing that I was thinking about, though, knowing this period of history, is just that when it came to women, African Americans, was he serious about that education for all aspect, or what do you think about that?
He was in certain aspects. As far as women, he wanted them to be educated, but just enough so that they could assist their children at home when they had questions, you know, for instance, with homework. But that's it. But he could not visualize women in positions of leadership, and the novels that they read, he felt infected their minds like poison, as well as they should concentrate on dancing, drawing, and music.
So that's the women's work, right? Dancing and drawing, is that what he thought?
Yes, that's what he felt they should stick to. And but as far as the African Americans, he truly wanted them educated more than he did the women. It's just, and he put it in his bill to educate it, and even tried for emancipation, but the fight was too strong, and he knew at that point, you know how you know something's just not going to work and it's only going to make things worse. Because he even wanted them educated, because he knew eventually they would be emancipated, and he wanted them to be prepared for society, which I thought was a true vision. And so he did want education for them, but did back out, and it was taken out of the bill.
Well, I can see that when you consider that their lack of education would impact everybody else as well. So I can see how that all kind of played together. Okay. Very interesting.
All right. Well, thank you for joining, and I'll see you again.
Okay. Bye.